Hello everyone, and welcome to a bonus episode of the Rene Plays Games podcast. This is something that I was told people liked, and they wanted to hear more of, and it's a bonus episode month. There's 5 Tuesdays this month, so I'm releasing not just this, but another bonus episode as well, and it kind of coincides with the other one. This is going to be my 2025 Designologue, or Design Doc, Diaries, whatever we're going to be calling it. A short episode where I'm going to talk about the games that I have rattling around in my head, in my Google Docs, in my unfinished notebooks, and all of these things, where they're at, what I'm thinking, if any new ones have come up. I didn't even revisit the last episode before just clicking record on this, just to update you on what I've been thinking. I'm actually not going to go into probably as much detail as I did last time. I'm just going to talk about some of the ones that I've made progress on, some of the ones that I still want to work more on, etc. So again, this is going to be a short episode, but here's what I got. So far, in my short little nerd on the internet career here, I've released 4 games, or well, 3 games and 1 expansion. Christian and I from the DMs After Dark released Pine Island as part of Drive-Thru RPG's one of their summer jams, I forget what they call them, but we released Pine Island, which is a summer camp horror game using the Caltrop core system. D4s, don't step on them. That was a fun one. That was like our first endeavor into it. The layout is fine. I'm pretty sure it's still up on Drive-Thru RPG for free. We reduced the price from the $3 we originally were asking for it and just never looked back. So go check that out if you want a quick, one-shottable summer camp horror RPG. Very simple. I also released another one-shot game, which is One Last Quest, which is my lasers and feelings hack of revisiting characters you've played in campaigns past that you never really got enough out of, or just want to revisit for a silly little one-shot in their elder years. It's really silly, it's really fun, it allows you to make these characters who've had heroic lives, and you can make up all of these insane things that they've done, but now they're old and not moving like they used to, and they just gotta get it together for one last quest at the retirement home. That one is free. It is up on itch.io. Link will be in the description. And then lastly, if you're listening to this, there's another bonus episode on this day on this feed, which is me playing through a new city for my Mech vs. Kaiju Carved by Rune game, inspired by Spencer Campbell, aka Gila RPGs'. RPGs sounded like RPGs. That's funny. Anyway, they're Rune and Reap games, which are solo kind of Dark Souls-esque or Souls-like games. They're pretty hard, they're tactical, and my friend Rosso came up with the idea where he said, I think this would port really well for Mech vs. Kaiju, and I said, let's make that happen, and now we are 3 cities in and already developing the next 2. So again, those are the ones that I've got out, and now probably what you came here for, which is for me to talk about games that I want to put out. I'm going to start with games that I consider near completion, probably near release. I would say that it's very likely that I get all of these games out in the next year, probably not by the end of 2025. I think 2 of these are maybes for by the end of 2025 if I can get my layout skills a little more clean and get better at them so it doesn't take me as long. And then I'll talk about some conceptual ideas I have that are bigger projects or just not close enough to done yet. So here goes with the in-development near-release games that I got going on. First, and I'm just gonna keep this one super short and simple, 2 new mech cities. Rosso and I are really figuring out the system that works for us for designing these cities. We have like a template built, and it's much easier to conceptualize and follow through with these mech cities. I found a great online resource for making the cards, and I have a new like Google Sheets CSV that just kind of automatically updates cards and stuff like that, so it's fun to come up with new keyword mechanics and stuff like that. So they're all going to start feeling a bit different, and there'll just be more mech for you to play. Cities will always be free, So yeah, those are definitely going to be done, and I'll probably release those sometime in the fall. Next, I have a 2-player buddy cop TTRPG that uses a deck of cards, and I am calling it Deck-tectives. Now, let me preface this by saying, fully acknowledge and understand that the law enforcement system in America is not great. The subtitle or working subtitle I have for this game is All Cops Are Buddies, so laying out my feelings on the matter there. But buddy cop media as a genre, very fun. I love my X-Files, Grimm, I love Law & Order, I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine. These two people investigating a crime and getting to the bottom of it in a nice, neat 45-minute serial, procedural, episodic framework is really satisfying. And so I set out to make a game that can emulate that. Ideally, this game is playable in about 45 minutes to an hour. It follows a 3-act structure and is based off of the Carta system by Peach Garden Games. If you're familiar with that, I think a lot of the Wretched and Alone does use cards. I don't know if that is Carta inspired, but Dead Belt, I think, is by a couple of Drakes. Dragon Dowser by Hatchlings Games, which I have a one-shot of on this podcast feed, is a Carta game. The general gist is, over the course of 3 acts, you have a 3x3 grid of cards face down. Both of the investigators are going to have small hands that they can use to overcome prompts as they flip cards and investigate during these 3 acts. At the end of each act, you're going to flip cards and choose a prompt that is going to thicken the plot as you go into your commercial break, and by the end of the 3rd act, you will have a pile of clues and a pile of complications, which you will then use to see if you can catch and book this criminal. If that sounds interesting to you, definitely reach out to me. I have playtested it with some of my coworkers at lunch games. I have playtested it with my wife and a few friends, and it seems to work. All of the cards have prompts and keywords and a bunch of things that you can use to kind of just make this game, narratively come to life in a very quick turnaround and session, and hopefully have some fun investigating some crimes. Next, I will talk about a game that I believe I've brought up a few times on this channel, either in interviews or what have you, and that is a game that I'm designing for young players called Party Animals. This is undergoing some redos, but I think that I've put enough work into it that it's pretty close conceptually to the point where once I clean up the changes that I've made to remove violence as really a viable option in it, that's something that I've wanted to do. And then by making that decision, I realized I didn't need hearts and defense. I think I'm going to keep hearts in as basically an energy meter for kids, to understand that you need to refuel, you need to rest, you know what I mean? You need to take care of yourself. No pun intended, I have a thing called Lick Your Wounds, because, again, they're playing animals. But this is a very fun game if you are a parent listening to this channel and you want to get your kid into this game. I feel like maybe this is just me. I was obsessed with animals as a kid, and I think every kid, if you ask them the question, what's your favorite animal, they're going to have an answer. So this game is designed to get kids playing animals, and the goal is, like a lot of my games, I want you to learn something from it, if possible. So the environmental scientist in me wants to present these games in sort of biomes and specific ecosystems. So you'll have animals that do live near one another for the most part in different releases, so that way you can choose animals that are going to cohabitate in real life, and that way they're going to have different real-life adaptations and abilities based on what these animals do within their environment, how they function, and how they engage with the various trophic levels and the environment around them. So it should be educational, but that's really not the gist. You're just going to be playing animals, and depending on the age of the kids that you're playing with, you can go anywhere from, my son is 4 years old, and I could easily just replicate a Dora the Explorer style episode where it's hey, we're starting here, we have to get there, we have to go from here to there, and there are multiple scenes along the way with obstacles we must overcome. Very easy, or you can make it a little more interesting. I have options for older kids as they get used to playing TTRPGs. maybe make it a small grid map where they get to kind of freely wander, and there are oracles and cards that can introduce complications and plot twists and all of these other things. And the nice thing about that is if I release it, I get to release, temperate forests, I get to release the Arctic, I get to release the deserts, I get to release the rainforest, I get to release underwater. And then if you really want to get weird, if people are really enjoying this, if this is an option, I get to release things like mythical creatures, and we can have some fun with that. I get to release things like, I have this written down as the stuffed of legend, and you get to play stuffed animals in houses, etc., or playgrounds, right? It's just a fun idea that I think if you have kids, you're probably going to listen to this and go, that does sound like that could be fun. If you don't, I totally get why you're like, move on. So let's do that. Oh, and mechanically, it's just D6 systems. Roll and count successes. You don't have to do much math for kids. Next, I'm going to talk about 2 games, ? 2 things that I'm working on with people that you will have heard on this podcast feed, either already or soon when this comes out. And I've talked with other podcasters, other designers, other actual play people, and sometimes it just comes up that we have an idea and we're like, hey, should we actually do this? So I'm going to keep these both very short. The first is Oops All Bombs, which I talked about both on this channel and on the Dungeons & Degrees podcast with Adrian and Alex. I don't even remember how it came up, but we joked about a game called Oops All Bombs. And out of nowhere, Adrian messaged me and was like, I think I actually have an idea for this. And I think it has the makings of a very fun, very silly one-shot game. One-shot, one-pager. Like, by the end of it, everyone will have blown up, but it's about the shenanigans that happen along the way. Very interesting mechanic that Adrian came up with, which is basically just D4 pool system, but they're always ticking down. So you're literally watching your fuses going, and you need to keep them from reaching 0 as long as you possibly can. Very fun. Seems like it's going to work. We just need to iron out a few questions that we have about it, but that could be a very easy one-pager. Next, with Matt of Roleplay Chat, we had a conversation and came up with this idea to make like a matrix, right? People love, again, I'm outside of this garden wall at this point, but if you ask people about RPGs, they assume you're talking D&D. One of the big things when people start getting into D&D is, what's your alignment, or what's this character's alignment? And the alignment chart, for some reason, has this like really important pull, and people think that it's an important thing. But what if that matrix wasn't about your alignment from chaotic to lawful to good to evil, but instead mapped out your relationship with other characters, PCs, NPCs, your adventuring group and other factions within the world, etc. And you kind of have the middle square, like a bingo square, which is just the free space, and that is like neutral. Like, I kind of know this person, I don't really know this person, I don't really like them, and I don't really dislike them. And then you have ways to, over the course of interacting with different characters, you can work with your GM and say, I think that moved this more in the I know this person better, so let's move them up a square in the y-axis. Or they did something that I wasn't expecting, and I think I like them more for it. Okay, so we move them right on the x-axis towards I like them more. It's very simple, it's system agnostic, and it could just be something that if it helps you remember your interactions with other characters in a campaign, or especially if it's a game that relies heavily on a relationship web, or like there's a lot of recurring NPCs or important relationships, this could be an interesting tool. And we are chatting through that, and I think that it's not something that's going to require a ton of work, but it's something that could be really helpful in just about any game. Now, the last of the near release in developments is the biggest game I've ever attempted to make. You've heard about this if you listen to my podcast. You've heard about this on the DMs After Dark feed. Christian and I, for a few years, and we've dropped it for like a full year and are just picking it back up, have been designing a post-catastrophe game. We don't like calling it post-apocalyptic because the dust hasn't settled in this game. Something catastrophic happened, the power went out, and it never came back, and it's been 6 months. We are tentatively calling this game Gardens of Rust. And the premise is you are going to play where you live, or pick a city, whatever you want to do, and you are going to play survivors that have made it 6 months. You have a small community that you are working on developing. There is an entire community phase, which is like downtime. And then when your player characters go out into the world, which is familiar to you as people because you live in this area, you are exploring a familiar world in a very different way, and you are looking for the things that you need to survive. You are dealing with other people who have been through some stuff. You are working on projects to bring your standard of living back up to something even remotely comfortable. Now, this sounds like a bleak game, and it probably will be very bleak. But as an environmental scientist, somebody looking at the world with a young child in the face of climate change, has gotten into a little bit of like outdoor survival stuff. It's just something to me that I think is important to think about, even in a fictitious way. Where are you going to get fresh water when you're out of bottled water? Where can you go in a storm to stay safe? How do you build a lean-to? Can you start a fire? Little things like this. How do you navigate without a smartphone? If you don't have Google Maps, how do you determine which way is east and west? Like, some people probably can't do that. Now, that's not the crux of this game. That wouldn't be the most fun thing. We've developed an entirely original, as far as I can tell, dice system and resolution mechanic and level ups and all of this stuff. I'm not going to go further into this game. You've heard me talk about it before. Stay tuned, because there's going to be a full podcast series, this feed and the DMs After Dark feed, coming out soon, where Christian and I, and maybe an extra third person who has been around the entire time we've been designing this, are going to sit down. We're going to talk about our decisions, why we made them. We're going to provide examples, some early gameplay, actual play kind of examples and stuff like that. So stay tuned. I think this is going to be a big one. It may even be the first thing we ever crowdfund. That's how big I want to go with this. I'm willing to spend money on really awesome art and make this awesome. We're already at 20 minutes. I don't want this episode to be super long, so I'm just going to go over a handful of the other projects that I do plan on making and I want to spend time on, because I think that these are all very cool concepts I haven't seen in a lot of other games, if any. And if they are something that sounds interesting to you, I highly recommend, I urge you to reach out to me and kick me and say, that does sound cool, please make this, or even ask me to tell you more about it or share what I've got, so you can let me know if something seems like I'm onto something or not. So here goes, rapid fire. I'm giving each of these like a minute. Ready? The first one is a game where you play white blood cells within the human body that I have tentatively titled Self-Defense, but spelled C-E-L-L parentheses F defense. You are playing PC's protector cells. Not really. You could play... So anyway, 1 minute. Go, Rene. You play white blood cells within the body. There are a lot of different white blood cells that do different jobs in your immune system. If you've watched Osmosis Jones, you can definitely anthropomorphize the inside of your own body, cell types, etc. The cells at work anime and manga are super good. And again, this is a game where in the process you can learn something about cell biology. I taught it for 2 years as a grad student in biology and environmental sciences, so it's just something that I think is really cool. The immune system is great. Go watch Kurzgesagt. I definitely just butchered the pronunciation of that, but they have an amazing YouTube series, we'll link it in the description, all about your immune system. Those vibes, visually, just make me want to make this game. And yeah, again, just maybe learn some things. You don't have to be a cell biologist or anybody in the medical field to play or run this game, but it might be something where you learn what's actually going on in your body when you're fighting these infections and things like that. All right, that was a minute and a half, so let's pick up the pace. Next one, solo tarot-based game where you play as an artist who just received a 1-year residency at a famous, like centuries-old refuge for artists where people are known to have always put out their best work when they work here. Why is that? Why does everyone seem to come here and leave with a masterpiece? Seems like there might be something funky going on there. I don't have a whole lot here, but it is basically going to be something like a Tangled Blessings, an Anamnesis, a 1,000-Year-Old Vampire. I'm looking into Project Echo, which is a time travel game, but it uses an actual 1-year journal, like a planner, and you jump around like that. I think this game would be really cool if it was very time-based, and you spend the year investigating the grounds, working on your project, finding weird things. Maybe there is some strange magic or time travel or something going on here. That's up to you. I don't think the game is going to say one way or another. That's the beauty of a solo game, especially with tarot. A minute and a half seems to be the running tally, so let's keep going. I want to make a game where you are discovering magic. I know that there are a few games like this, but all of them that I've found are usually older RPGs that are a little more crunchy than I want them to be. And I think that it'd be really fun to set this during what is known as the Great War, the very early 20th century, the 19-teens. Technology is not at a place yet where it's going to really hinder a lot of questions about science. And the world is reeling from a lot of things happening, right? Globalism is beginning, wars are being fought, but this is going to be an alternate history Earth where those vibes, 19-teens at the latest kind of thing, and you are people who are discovering magic. Basically, it ended the war. A truce had to be called. This is too dangerous, and for some reason, magic is now available to the wider public than those who used to be the practitioners in folklore and legend. So, people gotta figure out what that means. Alright, here's another one. I have a feeling this one would be popular if I got to it. This is my Forged in the Dark game. It's called Candles in the Dark Library, and it is forged in that dark academia. I can't believe this doesn't exist, honestly, so someone's probably going to beat me to it, but the map is the campus and surrounding region. The factions are the cliques, the faculty, the bigger arcane organizations of the world, universities, institutions of higher learning, recruitment for secret arcane jobs in the otherwise mundane world. Think your Wednesdays, think your Sabrina's Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, think your The Order, the Magicians, you name it. These touchstones. Turf is going to be based on places in campus that your crew has access or like sway or privacy in. I'm debating removing the crew playbook from this in my Forged in the Dark, and you're still going to have a crew play sheet, but it's not going to be specific to certain kinds of cliques. I mean, I could do like the theater kids, you know what I mean? Like, and the illusionists and all these other things, or even houses, but I don't think I'm gonna customize them as much. We'll see if that comes up as a thing. But anyway, yeah, you're kids at a school, and instead of stress, you're gonna have basically your like GPA, which represents your grades or your standing in your class with the faculty. When you would hit trauma, and this is great, when you're doing a score, you are foregoing studying. So that's going to reflect in your grades becoming worse. And when you would hit what is normally a trauma in Blades in the Dark, you are just going to get punished. And if you are punished 4 times, you're expelled. And those punishments are going to give you a reputation, so it works almost the same way. Everything ports so well. It's crazy. I don't know how this doesn't exist. And until someone beats me to it, I'll be the one who's going to work on it. All right, only a few more. One is a music making game that I've wanted to make for a long time called All That Jazz. Music is math, dice are math. It actually kind of works out really well when you consider 4/4 time signatures, 16 beats, 8 beats. It all factors down to something you can roll on dice pretty well. And again, you could teach people about scales or modes or what have you. Scales have 7 notes before they hit the 8th note, which is an octave. For the most part, again, I know there are exceptions to this, but again, it all maps out pretty well. And I think it'd be really cool to have a keepsake game where by the end of it, you can plug in whatever you've created on your character sheet, which is just sheet music, for your instrument that you've chosen, and find like an online tool that you can map this onto and listen back and see what you and your friends made, what your music sounds like. All right, last one I'm going to talk about for this episode, and that is a dungeon delving game. But you ever look at a crossword puzzle and then look at those old school grid dungeons that people draw like dice and logos and be like, kind of looks like a crossword puzzle? Well, there's the idea. I think that it'd be really fun to make, even if this is just a GM resource, right? Or this is a game, but if there could be really interesting GM section about how to make these dungeons, I want to look into how to make a crossword puzzle, and then you use words that can give the characters information as they explore these areas. And when they complete a word or a block of clues that represents a room or a hallway or what have you, they get more hints, they get their treasure. I feel like combat could be, because again, this is a dungeon crawler, combat could be a thing where successive hits or enemies defeated give you like letters throughout a dungeon or something like that, like beating a mob boss or like a level boss or what have you, could just be like all of the E's on this puzzle are now visible. It's just, it makes for an interesting project that I have begun basically copying crossword puzzle layouts that I've seen and then just coloring in more grids and thinking to myself, how do I make this work? If you are also a word nerd or puzzle nerd like me, let me know if you've thought of this or if there's a huge problem that I'm missing. All right, that is the bonus episode of just a few people have requested more design episodes. If this is something people like and you want to hear more about individual games and I can go through like the actual mechanics and decisions that I've made and thoughts that I've had about how to marry the experience and the mechanics, etc., I could do deeper dives if that's something people like. Also, just by talking about it, it starts to hold me more accountable, so if any of these seem like they'd be up your alley or you want to hear more about how I am going about designing them, let me know. Maybe I'll do some specific game deep dives and maybe some live design work and stuff like that in an episode. Thank you so much for listening. This is a bonus episode. You already know where you're at, so find me on the social medias, email me at reneplaysgamespod@gmail.com, and otherwise get out there, play more games, make a silly game. I believe in you.